We're going to do one thing before we get started. As many of you know, in our community, we've made it a tradition that whenever someone makes their transition or passes, that we light a candle. We can't use actual fire in this space, so I do have an electric candle that I'm going to turn on momentarily. But many of you here probably may not have met Nicole Haley. Is a woman who came to us this community about a year ago. She actually showed up on one of our prayer Sundays, and we had just wrapped up the prayer, and she came up to the front and said, "Can I ask for prayer?" And she had been dealing with breast cancer that had been spreading throughout her body. And she only came to our services a few times, but her and her family were deeply tuned into our Sunday services, and our practitioners and our prayer team, and especially Chaplain Cheryl, have been holding Nicole and her husband Ryan and their two children for the last year deeply and closely. And so we just want to lift Nicole up today. And as always, I remind us that Ernest Holmes tells us that we believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. And so let us just hold Nicole in our hearts, whether you met her or not, and let us just lift her up, knowing that her life continues into the life beyond life, and that her beingness continues to expand, and that she is indeed free, and that we can hold her family, her husband, and her children as they release her as well. So take a deep breath in. And so I light this candle to simply acknowledge the infinite light that is Nicole's life, that is indeed the one who is living as all of us. Hmm. So let's begin again by taking a few breaths together. So exhale first, take a deep breath in, and let go. Another deep breath, and let go. One more deep breath in, and let it go. Hmm. So, good morning again. Happy winter solstice. Yesterday was the solstice. We are now in winter. I'm going to tell you a funny little story before we dive into more spiritual things today. I learned this week that the fire department no longer rescues kittens from the top of trees because Leah had a kitten who went missing the other day and was gone for about 24 hours, and she calls me and says, "How are you at climbing trees?" And there was a kitten at the very top of a redwood tree behind Leah's house. Luckily, it was just after dark when I showed up. So when I volunteered to climb up the tree and get the kitten, I was able to avoid my fear of heights because I couldn't see how far up I was. Until I looked over and realized that I was looking down at the shopping center and froze. Um, and we got the kitten down. And but there was a moment where, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. So if you have a lost kitten in a tree, don't call the fire department, call your minister. Wasn't in the job description. Um, but there was a moment as I'm climbing up this tree and very high up there where I actually had a frozen like the kitten moment, and like I needed to continue to go up to try to get this little kitty, and it was a moment where I was higher up than I was comfortable with and was completely frozen and kind of had to breathe and sit there for a second and then realized that 5 more feet up is no different than 5 more feet down. And that the only thing I could do in that moment was just remain completely present with where I was and not worry about the next 5 branches up of what's just the next branch. And it was, one of those spiritual lessons while clinging to a tree, trying to get a kitten down. That even in these moments where we feel like I cannot possibly go any higher and I feel like I can't get down from where I am, that it's always just about the next branch, reaching the next stable place. And that no matter how afraid we are of falling or losing our grip or whatever it is, that it's always just one step, one branch, one motion at a time. So that was my little lesson this week. So as I said, we just passed winter solstice, which for me, I really believe is the reason for the season, right? All of the holidays that all of many of our religious traditions, especially in the northern hemisphere at this time of winter, almost all of the religious and spiritual and cultural holidays that we celebrate the light, whether it's the birth of the light, the miracle of the light, the return of the light. Do you hear a theme here? Right? And I believe it's because we are human beings, we are earth creatures, right? And we live on a planet that is wobbling around the sun, that is spinning through space at thousands of miles an hour. Like, that's a miracle, right? And that this planet that we live on has a slight axis, which means it wobbles a little bit. And in that wobble, there become cycles and seasons. There become truths that we can depend on, even in the wobble of the planet. And as I've expressed in my time here, and many of you have heard this, depression and seasonal, depression is something that I've experienced much of my life. And winter solstice to me is always like the day to celebrate and wait for as fall comes and the days get darker and darker and darker. Because on the winter solstice, in a time where everything is getting darker each and every single day, we turn a corner and everything gets still. And then from that day forward, everything gets brighter. We do have to move through the winter, but every day gets brighter. And that little truth is big enough that almost all of the religions in our northern hemisphere celebrate that moment in the year. Right? Think back to your ancestors 100, 500 years ago before they had electricity and houses and all the things. Like the winter solstice, the winter time, this was a time of survival. This was a time of uncertainty, whether or not we were going to make it through that long, dark night. Right? And what do at the darkest time of the year? We huddle together, right? We celebrate, right? It's the darkest, it's the coldest it's going to be all year long. For us, it gets real wet and rainy, probably. Other places, it gets real snowy. It's dark, it's cold, and we're like, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Like, is it? Is it really? But we do this because there's something so deep within us that says we have got to celebrate when it's dark. When the darkest nights come, we are going to light it up. Right? So we bring the green trees in our houses and remind us that the renewal continues. We put lights on everything. We have parties every week of the month for 3 months, from Halloween to Thanksgiving to Christmas to New Year's. The time of the year we should be slowing down. What do? We do everything all at once, right? And it's because I think that there's something so powerful in this time of year for us, especially as we might meet the dark moments of our lives or those cold times in our consciousness. Maybe some of us feel like we're moving through that in our nation, a time of darkness, a time of uncertainty, a time where things are difficult. They seem like they're falling apart. The winter solstice can be that promise for us that even in the darkest times, there's a glimmer of hope. That there comes a moment when the axis changes, when the balance pivots, and things start to move another direction. I think it's important for us to honor and recognize the cycles and the seasons of the planet and of the year, because they give us deep truths that are truer than true, that have been true for humans as long as humans have been humans. That we've looked to the stars, we've looked to the moon, we've looked to the earth to remind us of the promises that are true. Right? Many, many, many years ago, I was in a depressive episode. I was in care after a suicide attempt. This was a long, long time ago, a old part of my story. But I remember being in a moment of deep, deep, deep inner darkness. And one of the folks who was caring for me just gave me a little piece of paper, and on it was written, "Winter never fails to turn into spring." And it was like someone had turned the light on. It didn't change what I was experiencing in the moment, but it gave me this realization that no matter how long and dark the winter seasons of our lives appear, there is always a springtime to follow. And that pattern is always true, right? And so let this holiday season, let this winter solstice, this beginning of winter, be a time for all of us to look to the higher truths, not only just in nature, not only just the return of the light, but to remember as we move through challenging times that there are higher truths, there are higher principles, there are greater ideas that we can look to, that can be our guiding light, that can lift our consciousness, that can remind us of what it is we are seeking to be and move towards rather than what we're seeking to change and get away from, right? Michael Beckwith will always tell us we're either pushed by the pain or we're pulled by the vision, right? So we can look to all that is, all the problems, all the stuff that's broken, and we can try to get away from it. Or we can look to the higher vision and try to move towards it. And I tell you, moving towards is often way more fun than moving away from, right? There's more energy, there's more excitement there. When we feel like we're moving towards something, when we're growing towards something, when we have a dream or a vision that we're working towards. Take a deep breath. I just want to invite everyone to go within for a moment and just think about this transition from fall into winter. The days have been getting shorter. Last night was the longest night. Yesterday was the shortest day. And then starting today, the light returns each and every day. But take a moment and just go within and think to yourself, what is the long, dark night that has been present for you in these times? What is the thing you're struggling to see your way out of? The thing that feels consuming or too much? What is it that has been falling away? And then just take a moment and imagine that you can just begin to pour light on that thing, whatever it is. And what if, whatever that struggle is for you, what if every day starting today it got easier? What if every day starting today, as you move out from this place, you could see that it's getting a little brighter, that your clarity is returning? And imagine the springtime that is in front of you, the springtime that is in front of us. To take a moment and think to yourself, what is the vision? What's the dream that you want to move towards? And then just take a deep breath in. Take another deep breath and let it go. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to invite you just to turn to somebody right next to you. And if you're willing, either share with them what is the dark night that you've been holding and or what's the vision that you're looking towards. And you're just going to take 2 minutes and just share with somebody next to you what it is you just brought through your mind. And for those of you online, maybe tell us in the chat. And Lauren, would you just give us a little something to carry us through for a moment? And if both people haven't had a chance to share yet, maybe switch and listen if you've been speaking. And take another 30 seconds just to wrap up whatever you're sharing right now. And take another deep breath in and give gratitude to the person you've been chatting with. Let's bring our attention back together. And so, my friends, individually and collectively, what if we have all just turned a corner? And that whatever the darkness is that has been consuming us, whatever it is that we have been holding, that maybe this is the moment things turn. And let's know that that's possible in every moment. That no matter what direction we've been going, there's always the opportunity to begin to turn and move in a new way. And I used to hold this vision in my mind that life is kind of like one of those big ocean barges that's moving across the ocean, you know? And that, when you change the coordinates and say, we're going this way, but we actually need to go that way, you put in new coordinates. And then underneath the surface, on the back of the rudder, a little trim tab flips. One little thing changes and goes flip, like that. And then because of that little flip, then the rudder starts to turn. And then underneath the surface, all the things are starting to shift and move. And if you're standing on the surface of the boat, you might just notice a little rumble. And it might not be 2 hours, 3 hours before you notice your trajectories change. But it was way back when you said, I'm going to shift and put in the new coordinates that things started to change. And sometimes we don't see it until a little while later, right? The light is coming back as of today. It's not going to be a few weeks, maybe a month or so before we start to go, oh, yeah, it's not dark at 5 o'clock anymore, right? So let's just notice, let's allow the seasons to carry us, and let's just hold each other in this dark, cold time of the year. I hope that you have the joyous celebrations with friends, family, community over the next week or so. And next week, we're going to have a big intention setting, movement oriented, interactive service to wrap up the year. So take a deep breath in, let it go. Take another deep breath in, let go. If it's comfortable, close your eyes and let's just breathe. And so, as we breathe together, I invite us to go inward, to pay attention to our breathing. Take a moment and just notice breathing in, breathing out. We can take control of our breath, and yet it is true that something is breathing us, that we are being animated, we are being lived, that each one of us is filled with and part of the great oneness. Because what I know is that there's one seamless presence that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of existence. It is this one that I call God, I call our higher self, consciousness, the divine mind, the life of the universe. And so let us just know that the great living universe is always in harmony, is always holding itself in perfect balance, even with its cycles and its seasons, even with its wobbles, even with its ebbs and flows. There is balance in the world. So let us look to the seasons, let us look to the return of the light, let us look to the balance within the wobble to remind us that there are higher truths at work in each one of our lives and in the life of the planet and as the activity of humanity in this world. So today, in what might feel like a dark moment, let us look to the light. And let us remember that each one of us can be the place where that light shines in the darkness. For each one of us are the light that has been sent to the world to illuminate that darkness. So let our light shine on. Let our truth shine on. Let our love shine on. As the words of the song that Gitanjali gives us, let actual light come shining from our eyes, from our hearts, from our words, from our actions. Each one of us is the light of the world. So let's remember the truth of who we are. That we are part of the infinite eternal life. And how sweet it is that each one of us has the opportunity to incarnate, to become individuals, and to share who we are with each other and with the world. So I'm just grateful this morning for this beloved community, knowing that it is this gathering together that warms our hearts and our spirits. That as we build a collective consciousness of love and inclusion and acceptance, of possibility, that we create a space in the world that shines that truth brighter and brighter. So let us be a beacon, a lighthouse even, and shine into the darkness the truth of our oneness, the truth of our love and our connection to each other, to all people, and to the earth life. Truly we are one. And so let us surrender yet again to that which is breathing us, to the infinite presence that is here. Breathe in. Let go. And we let it be. And so it is.